Come on, here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Black Spinner Music Podcast. And today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. William Toth from Will's Rush Page. How's it going, Will?
Good, Andy. Thank you. Going well. Hope it's going well for you. And thanks for having me. It's been a fun sort of analysis of the 80s output of Neil. Always happy to talk Neil Young, as you know. And
Yep.
I know we've done these before, and we always have a good time. So
Yeah, and this is part two of us going through Neil Young. It's been a long stretch from the 70s, and now today we are going to hit Neil Young's the 80s albums,
yep.
which was the most turbulent time in his career. But we are going to touch on the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s when the times come. And he seems to keep moving on. So maybe one day we'll start getting into his 2020s. But
Right.
he seems to be a guy that just keeps plugging along
Mhm.
with all of his music.
Yep.
Now, Will and I were just talking when we were off the air about us going through his music, and I was gonna. What I wanted to say was that when these albums that he made in the 1980s, when they came out, there was a lot of ridicule from them, from critics and fans alike. But during the past few years, since my taste in music has changed, as we all evolve in music, and since I've been doing podcasts and I'm joining Facebook in 2020, and just listening to different kinds of music, I've really come to appreciate this decade of Neil Young. It might not be everybody's favorite, but he just kept working. And there's some hits
Mhm.
and misses on each album, which was kind of odd from the 70s because the 70s were just masterpieces from top to
Mhm.
bottom. So
Mhm.
this was fun to go through different genres, and we will touch on that. How did it go for you
Yeah, it
when
was good.
well,
Excuse me. It was interesting to revisit these, and I did a little research on each of them, and I know we'll talk about it. But yeah, it was a very turbulent decade for Neil, and there was a lot of pressure from the labels as well, the two labels, and I think that's part of the reason he left the one label, went to the other. They weren't giving him a lot of creative control, and he. But I also sensed after revisiting these and doing some research, as I said, that he was also having a bit of an identity crisis, also because he had reached a peak of fame in the '70s, late '70s, obviously from Harvest Forward, really hit that peak of commercial fame, and everybody was expecting that Neil Young coming into the '80s, and so there's a lot of pressure there, and there was a lot of pressure from the label to for him to produce that type of Neil Young sound, and he talks about it in a lot of the research I read, online interviews and stuff about each record, some of the pressure, and I made some notes around that as well. But no, it's been interesting to revisit. You made a good point. There's some excellent material on each of these records, and there are some top notch records in my opinion within this decade. Um, and then there's some interesting songs, shall we say, as well that I could see would not have radio appeal or commercial appeal, but for me, I like some of them. I like the experimentation.
yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah,
And also, I wanted to say that there was a lot of his home life, a lot of his personal life was going
yeah.
on with the health of his son, um,
Excuse me, Andy. Yeah.
the breakup of a marriage and a new one starting. A lot of back
Yes.
and forth was going on with this, and the deals that he made with Geffen, which we will touch on as well, was one album per year and
Yes.
tour, and have so much personal things going on at home where he couldn't be,
Yeah.
and he was trying to fulfill so much. And you're right about his personal identity getting caught in all this
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
trying to pretty much appease his bosses and put product out there, do his job.
Yeah.
And some people weren't happy with it, and that just added more to his ups and downs of this decade. But
Yeah.
without further more, we will get started. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think we're ready to go. It's like I said, I just finished up today. Actually, I was listening to the last output from '89 today, so we'll get to that. But I think we're going to start with the beginning, eh? If we want to follow the format that you've set up, I think.
Yeah, we sure are.
Hawks and Doves, 1980, beautiful. Yeah.
Hawks and Doves,
Yeah.
1980. There's the album right there. Now,
Yep.
Hawks and Doves, 1980, side one, as us Neil fans know. There it is.
Yeah.
And there's the back of it. So,
Yeah.
Side one was an album that was put together in the 1974-77 era. There were some outtakes that were not added on to the other albums. So, and side two was completely different. The writing was completely different because it was more current for the 1979, 1980, a little bit more political, or what was going on in the workforce in America back in 79 and 80. I found a couple of these songs to be really good. In fact, Captain Kennedy can be found in different Neil Young archives that were released, and that song stuck out to me. It didn't stick out to me before. This whole album didn't stick out to me before at all, but now, after listening to it again and having kind of a sense of an idea of what he was going for in this album. So, Hawks and Doves in 1980. What did you think about this one, Will?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you said. It's an interesting album. It's almost like a side one, side two. Obviously, it's so different. And I was reading that side one was recorded in the songs on side one were recorded in 74 to 77. So they were pre-recorded to obviously at an earlier time, as opposed to side two, as you said, was very more country-ish, more about the workforce. He speaks to the car industry, what was going on with the work plants in Detroit, I believe, all of that. Labor unions, all of it, music unions, really a lot of interesting stuff on side two, but they're completely different sides. And what I found was the song Lost in Space, which I absolutely love on side one. That was an outtake from Comes a Time, which I didn't know. And I thought that was interesting because Comes a Time is a beautiful 70s record for Neil, right? So I thought that's interesting. So you kind of see how these songs, including Captain Kennedy, kind of fit into his more folk era, right? And because it has that feel. There's some excellent songs on side one. I really like it, and the storytelling is there too. The same type of
the Old Homestead.
Exactly.
That really sticks out as a side one favorite, really.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, side two is so unique, really, and it's always been one of my favorite Neil Young records from that era because I bought it. I did buy it in the 80s, and so the records that I listened to in the 80s was the 70s and 80s output, obviously, and so that's why I have a very high opinion of this record. I like it very much. Aside from, I don't have a problem with the political take or message that he presents on side two. I think it's very interesting and historic for what was going on at the time. But it feels like two records to me, side one, side two, completely different records, short records. And the other thing I learned was this whole record is under 30 minutes. It's an extremely short LP, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, but that's my take on it. Like I said, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah. And in fact, it's kind of good that it is a little short because that's what the kind of the character it is to it. Because if it would have been any longer, it might not have been as good.
No,
because he did touch on the subjects that he touched on and hit every point precisely.
Yeah, exactly.
So
you're absolutely right. Yeah, I'm just looking at the tracks, and sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh no, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, like, Little Wing is a beautiful song.
Yeah.
absolutely. The whole old Homestead, that's a classic. Has a really good feel. Lost in Space, absolutely love that. Some of these songs I was playing guitar to acoustically at the time too, so I was learning from these songs how
Okay.
to play, and I was teaching myself at this time how to play acoustic guitar, and I taught myself all the wrong ways to play, but I wanted to play like Neil. So then years later, I took lessons and I learned the proper way to play.
Yeah.
But so I kind of had to undo it. But you know what? That's why I appreciate the side one so much. And side two completely different feel also with
Yeah.
the
It is.
coloring. The way he's laid out the record, like just like the cover, blue and then red, and the flag on the back. Very interesting. And then if I look at side two, Staying Power, Coastline, Union Man, Coming Apart at Every Nail, and Hawks and Doves.
Yeah.
And these songs are catchy. And I think
Yeah.
if you've only heard them a few times, give them a listen because they really grow on you. At least they did for me, right?
Oh yeah, they did the same thing to me too because I really enjoyed this album more than I did because I rarely pulled it out. I rarely ever played it, but
Yep.
I made it a point to do that for this show, and I was like, man, this is something that I'm going to have to hear some more of because it was very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't feel, I'll say this too, it doesn't feel like, it feels longer than 30 minutes. It goes quite fast.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a short record to me, but the songs are quite short. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
kind of the way
I was kind of surprised that it said less than 30 minutes because there are 10 tracks on it.
Yes,
You know?
exactly.
So there are 10 tracks on it, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, Jen, which was with us yesterday as well,
Yeah.
says, doesn't the first Neil Young album also have some blues-inspired sound? Yeah,
Yeah,
it really does. His first album, which is called self-titled Neil Young, it
yeah,
does have that sound to
yeah,
a sound where he wasn't too he didn't know which way to go, so he tried about everything on
yeah,
that debut album.
yeah. It's very true, and yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking, just trying to think. There are a couple. There are some blues influenced, almost country rock type songs on that
Yeah.
first record, right? So, and some other experimentation also.
Yeah,
So
like the long, no, I'm like the long winding acoustic Last Trip to Tulsa.
yes, I was just thinking that. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So,
which will master on the beach. I think
yeah,
he really masters that sound and that
excellent
feel
record.
for
Yeah,
writing
yeah,
on that one.
excellent record. Yeah,
And the
yeah,
second album that we're going to touch on from the 1980s is going to be called Reactor. This one he brings back his old buddies. His old buddies of Crazy Horse come back on this one. And he really sends a, oh, and very important, right? No, this is not his first album with Geffen, right? He's still with his
um,
price.
yes. No, you're correct. Yeah, I'm just looking at my notes, Andy. No, I think you're correct on that.
I think this is still a reprise.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
I can
it is.
check.
It is.
I have it right here. Yeah, yeah, you're
It's
correct.
still a reprise. And
Yeah,
this is a hard rocking album from
it
beginning
is.
to end. He doesn't seem to stop on this album. It's a Crazy Horse classic, an album that he can only make with Crazy Horse because it has a Crazy Horse sound.
Yeah,
And the songs on it is going to be Opera Star, also Surfer Joe and Mow the Sleeves, which I've
yeah,
heard several times, and I'm waiting for a story to come out of it, but it
yeah.
just doesn't materialize as a
Right.
full story. Kind of menders on it, and of course we got the ever famous T-Bone. Got
Yep.
mashed potatoes. They got no T-Bone, which is the
Yep.
only line, but it's 9 minutes of just great guitar
Yep.
and straight out drums and bass and just a band just rocking out.
Yep.
Um, on side two that I want to touch on was Southern Pacific,
Yep.
another album that they talk about. He talks about the workforce at the time, and we all know how obsessive Neil Young is about trains,
Right.
which is
That's
one
right.
thing that he loves. And of course, this ends with just a fantastic song called "Shots." Um,
Yeah.
of course, he will touch on "Reach Sound Like That" on the live album "Weld," but "Shots" was such a great track on here, and what a perfect way to end the album. So, what is your take on "Shots"?
First of all, I will say Shots
I'm
is an
sorry, "Reactor." I'm sorry.
no Reactor. Yeah, no problem. I've got comments on it. I love this record, and I have two copies. And I also have the triangular single for Southern Pacific, which I think you've seen on my site.
Oh yeah.
That was not easy to find, but I managed to find it, and it's I don't have it. It's on my wall right now, but it's red. There is a black one out there, and there is a green one. Apparently, that was a radio promo. So I'm on the search for those because, to me, those are collectors. Not many people come out with a triangular disc in that sense to promote a record.
Yeah.
I think that was very creative. The album itself, I love it. In fact, I think the album, if Neil was to get together with Crazy Horse and play this album in its entirety, I would pay a lot of money to see that. I think if he was to do a complete album in the modern world where bands are doing that now,
Yeah.
I think it would be such a good live show. First of all, I have seen the live versions of a lot of these tracks online.
Okay.
Opera Star, there's an excellent video for that where he's doing that. Just looking at T-Bone, I'm not sure that was ever played live, but I would imagine it's a. Oh well, actually, I'm wrong. It was played live because it's on the more recent live set that came out a few years ago during the pandemic, and I have the box set.
Which
I
one?
can't remember it right now. It's upstairs too. It'll come to me. It's not Year of the Horse. It's the. It's got the Crazy Horse symbol on the front. I don't.
I've got it right. I've got it right here, and I don't want to reach for it.
Okay.
It's the triple or the quadruple album. Is it a 4
Yes.
album?
It's a 4 album. That's right. I bought it. I bought the deluxe CD. I've never opened the LP, and I've still got a few records from the pandemic that I bought, haven't opened. That's one of them. But I can't remember the name of it. That's terrible. But the.
Hold on, I'm going to grab it. I got it right.
Okay.
Here.
Okay. We need to know, Andy.
All right. Is this the one you're talking about?
That's the one. Thank you. Way down in the rust bucket.
Way down in the rust bucket. Yep.
Yep.
Man, this is a really good one.
Yep. T-Bone is done. Like, it's a bar setting, and that recording in that session, that bar setting, was done right after Ragged Glory came out. So it's a lot of Ragged Glory material, and there's a lot of there are some older tracks such as I think Opera Star. I think they do that. T-Bone, Surfer Joe, maybe a couple others, but they come to mind. And it's the best live. I got to say, the T-Bone, hearing it live was very unique, I have to say, because hearing that song live to me would be a real treat. But this album, like I said, absolutely love it. It's just a hard rocking, grinding album. It's very unique. I think I made a few notes around my favorite songs are T-Bone, Shots, Southern Pacific, love that song, Opera Star, Surfer Joe, and Motor City, also another great song on side 2, I believe.
And again, he's talking about the car industry, because we all know he's a big car lover as well.
That's
especially
right.
Of the American car, the American.
Yep, that's right. That's why the 45, the casing around the triangular 45 I mentioned, it's got a picture of his Lincoln on there. So it's shaped like a car, and it was very cool. I feel that side 2 is just as strong as side 1.
Oh yeah, not stronger.
Yeah, exactly. And the way it ends, you mentioned Shots. I gotta say, I don't know if he's ever done that. I have heard an acoustic version of Shots. I have never heard another version other than what's on this record.
Oh, wow, okay.
I mean, it's just the way it plays out. You think it's going to be a short song, but it's quite lengthy, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. It's a rocking song. They really jam it out, and it's got that really early grunge feel to it. It's excellent.
Yep. And,
It's
and
very much like it.
and that's what makes the shot so good. Also, was the production work that they
Yes.
did on that song. It's fantastic. And Jan says, if I remember correctly, Neil Young's next album was on Geffen as his first Geffen album. Yes, this next one is going to be the
Yes.
first Geffen album, and we are going to touch on that. And we're going to talk about how it just surprised the execs and
Yeah.
everybody involved, and what will become of his years in the Geffen years, because we're about to touch on the Geffen years. Anything else you wanted to add about Reactor here?
No, not really. Just like I said, cool looking. Let's talk about the look. Right, it really stands out. So, from an LP point of view, back in the day, that's really gonna stand out on the wall in the record store, right? It's simple, it's bright, it's gonna draw your eye to it, and then the way it's designed, the artwork and internally as well, very cool looking. Yeah. Other than that, I love this record. It's one of my favorites. Always has been.
Yeah, it's a fantastic album. I liked it a lot more now, and in fact, it was you that helped me understand it a little bit more, because after I met you, I noticed that Reactor Triangle single that you've been talking about, and I pulled it out a little bit more during that time, and I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that song, I can see why he chose that song I can't remember. Sorry, the first song on the second side, Southern Pacific. All about the trains and that whole industry. A very good song. Just sounds like a train. Crazy Horse made a train sound. It sounds like a locomotive coming down just the way they did that. It's amazing. So I can see why that was the single.
Oh man, I forgot to mention that the sound of Southern Pacific. Before I jump ahead, the Crazy Horse on the bass and drums, it's got that chugga chugga sound all the way through, and it is awesome. And I think that's why I prefer side 2 more on that one. It starts off with Southern Pacific. It already starts off with a chugga 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 chugga, like a train going down the tracks at full speed.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's fantastic.
It opens with the sound of the train coming from the distance, and it's just a well-produced song and record, So yeah, exactly.
And was that David Briggs? I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Because I think David Briggs did everything until he passed, right? I think.
Up until that point in time.
Yeah. And the next album we're going to talk about, which Jan had already mentioned, this being the first Geffen album. And, the players on here are no surprises. You got Nils Lofgren, Ben Keith, Bruce Palmer, Ralph Molina, and Frank San Pedro, and Billy Talbot. So all these players are no one new to the Neil Young camp. But what is new is the direction that he would take on Trans with the vocoder and hiding what is most unique about him, which is his voice, and also the hard work it takes to translate the great songs and the great songwriter that he is. And that's what kind of lost me on Trans as well. Not everything is on vocoder. There's maybe like only 3 or 4 songs. But the vocoder is such a big part of this album that's what a lot of people or a lot of critics talk about, is the use of that vocoder. But also, it's got a cover of his own. It's got Mr. Soul on here.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And you're absolutely right. And I when I was reading about it more in depth, Crazy Horse was a bit pissed off because they had gone into the studio to lay down the tracks, and Neil scrapped the tracks and replaced their tracks with the machine, or with the machines that he was using. So it was a bit of a, and when they heard the finished product before it was released, they were like, well, what happened to our stuff? But they obviously knew Neil does what Neil wants to do.
Yeah.
But they were not happy, I guess, with that, but they went along with it. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, go ahead, Andy. I'm just jumping in there.
Oh no, you go ahead. I didn't know about the distaste for it by a Crazy Horse. I did not know that. You know, when I read off their names, I just assumed that they were on board with this, but they weren't on board on this. It
Not
was a
completely.
surprise when the
No.
finished product came out, huh?
Yep, they were a bit surprised that he had, like I said, stripped those tracks away because they had laid down recorded tracks for this before the vocoder or whatever it's called came in and all that stuff. Um, but I like this record. I like the way it sounds, and I think it's a good representation of what he was going through and what he was working on at the time. A big part of this record and why he changed it was so that he could develop sound technology to speak to his son,
Hmm.
who Ben. I guess Ben. He had a couple sons, but Ben was the one with cerebral palsy. And when I read about it, he was basically saying that he wanted to put his mind into the mind of Ben because Ben was trying to communicate with people, and at this time there was nothing to interpret or help with that disability. So he started to experiment with sounds and try and create something. He wanted to create a sound so that people understood something that you couldn't understand, and that was his goal and
Right.
his thinking at the time to create something that you really don't understand when you're listening to it. You're not sure what he's saying, and he wanted to give you a glimpse into Ben's world in that sense. So I think he achieved that. I like the futuristic appeal of this. I love the cover. If we talk about the cover, we've got the old classic Neil Young on the one side with the Lincoln and blue jeans, plaid shirt, the forest in the background, and then you've got the modernization here with
Yeah.
computers and technology all coming in, almost like a Tron type image here, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The way it's set up like that, and then the back is completely bizarre.
Yeah. Of
Um,
course.
but I get it. But yeah, you're right. It's Niles Lofgren is on here, Ben Keith, Bruce Palmer, Ralph Molina, of course, Joe Lala, Frank Sampedro, obviously, and Billy Talbot. So he gives credit to the Crazy Horse guys.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it's interesting. Like I said, there was things on when I did my research I didn't know. This was definitely the beginning of the lawsuit, though, because
Yeah.
it was right at this time they went, "What the hell is, what the hell is this?" Um, I thought it's a pretty cool sounding record for '83, and
Oh yeah,
he
the
was,
production was fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and he was listening to a lot of Kraftwerk at the time, eh?
Yeah.
And a couple other
Devo.
industrial and Devo. That's right.
Yeah.
And he did that partnership with Devo as well. That
Yeah.
recording and movie. I had some movie takes, I think. So that's kind of interesting. What do you think of the songs on this record?
Oh well, the songs were a little uneven for me because of the use of the vocoder and because of the stripped Neil Young sound that we so love.
Hmm.
But I was more interested in the sound of it and the
Hmm.
feel of it more than the actual songs that were on it. But when you got to Unplugged, Neil Young Unplugged, and you hear the unplugged version of Transformer Man, it's a beautiful song.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
sung on here is hard to decipher the lyrics without reading what the lyrics are, and then you get to it. But so much better on the unplugged version,
Right. Right.
you know. So
Yeah. I think if he was, I agree with you. If he was going to take this direction, maybe he should have left some of the songs that he had recorded previously out and rather than reintroduce them with this electronic sound. It may have worked better that way. But
yeah.
you go ahead about the songs.
Well,
Yeah.
I think he just went a little bit too overboard. I think if he would have kept his voice without the vocoder, but
Yeah.
still be electronic about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and but still be able to still pay homage to Ben. I believe he has two sons that have cerebral palsy now.
Yeah. You're right. You're right about
But
that.
Billy
Yeah.
Ben was the one that was around at the time, and now later on there was a second. I forgot his name.
Yeah, I have as well, but you're absolutely right about that.
A
Yeah.
younger brother.
Yes, that's right.
Which is odd to have two children with cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
That's
I got to exactly. And, so you can kind of see what was going on in his life at the time while this was being recorded
Oh yeah,
and
a lot of stuff.
produced and mixed, a lot of stuff. And it shows. And in fact, this decade, as we mentioned earlier, is turbulent with reflection of stuff going on in his life, and then the business side, what was going on with the labels and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Jan makes a comment here about this being an excellent record. I agree. It does have, he said, great sound and great riffs. Yeah, an experimental album sound wise. I agree, Jan.
Yeah, it was.
Exactly.
It was
Very much
really
so.
it was really groundbreaking. And instead of the record labels coming down on him, they said, "Man, this is a pretty good album. It's different from everything else that was out there." But
Yeah.
unfortunately, the executives at Geffen want him to sound more like Neil Young, and that's what brought the lawsuits on, because he was making non-Neil Young sounding albums.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
hold on to your hats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. You signed the wrong guy if you want him to stay in a certain mold.
Yeah, because this is nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
He's
Exactly.
gonna blow y'all's minds and blow y'all's wallets.
That's right. Yep, that's right.
Coming up.
I got to say, I really like the song "Computer Cowboy," aka "Sis Crusher." That's a good song. Like I said, it just has a unique feel. I would probably listen, like if I was to make a playlist of this, I would leave out the tracks, as I said, that have been recorded before, and then keep the electronic tracks separate, or maybe even do like an A side, B side split, kind of like you did with Hawks and Doves.
With Hawks and Doves, that would have been a nice EP.
Yeah, exactly. Even an EP would have been interesting. So, but yeah, I mean, Sample and Hold. Okay, there's one we do need to talk about.
Yeah,
that is a unique song, and it's a rocker. That's a rocking song and has a really cool sound. And I've seen video clips from the Trans tour of him doing that, and he's got the voice thing on and everything, and but he's also got Crazy Horse behind him on that. Actually, I'm not sure if it's Crazy Horse. It might be another backup band, but he's doing a really awesome job. Like it's well presented live. It's a good song, really rocks. Yeah. So there's some standout pieces on here for sure. I agree with you, Mr. Soul. Feels a little weird. Like an Inca's on here.
Yeah.
I think there's probably like 2 or 3 versions of that song. There's an acoustic. There's some that are the acoustic version is beautiful. This one is okay. But I don't hate this record. It's up there for me.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't hate it, but when you listen to it, you find a comfort in it, knowing that it's Neil Young. You know what I mean?
Yes,
when
I do.
You hear a Neil Young album, it's not that far off because you feel Neil Young playing. So that's always a plus.
Exactly. We wouldn't be fans if we didn't appreciate the different types of records that he makes, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the next one he's going to come out with, it's going to be Neil and the Shocking Pinks.
Yes.
Everybody's rocking.
Yes. Shocking Pinks. 1983.
1983. On this album, he changes genres again. Now, I've heard people complain about, rockabilly. I don't think it's a rockabilly album at all. To me, it's a 1950s tribute album with some with a couple of covers and some original music by Neil. I think he does a fantastic job on the harmonica here, something that he had put away for the past couple of albums. And he pulled out the harmonica again for this, and it sounds great. My standout tracks on this one is going to be Betty Lou's Got a New Pair of Shoes. I think it's great. Payola Blues, which tells the story of payola back in the 50s. And also the song "Wondering," we now know off of Neil Young's archives, part one, that "Wondering" was a song that was made by him back in their mid '60s, before he was even in Buffalo Springfield. And we've heard different versions of "Wondering." And on side two, to me, side two is the better side once again, and it's got the great cover, "Mystery Train," "Jelly Roll Man." But that "Mystery Train," we've heard it in so many different variations from Elvis, and and almost everybody in the roster at Sun Records doing that. So it was a comfort to hear Neil Young do that one on the title track as well. I love this album. At first, it was kind of weird. I know that my buddy Mark Alden Taylor's not a fan of it, but
Right.
if you would listen to it with an open mind and think of it as being a '50s send
Yep.
up, which a
Yep.
lot of bands do that. A lot of them do play homage to the bands or music before them, and that's what this is.
Yep.
And when Neil Young does something different, he goes. I mean, not just different, but when he does a project, man, he goes all in
Yep.
with a persona, with
Yep.
costumes,
Yep.
with
Absolutely.
everything.
You're right. The live show was staged. And I didn't know there was a tour. I don't know if it was a big tour, but he did a complete stage setup. What you see on the album cover is his attire and the whole bit. So
Yeah,
he does a full production, which he always, with any of his tours, he really
yeah.
goes all out. He's into that that
Where he
production value.
a persona of
Yep.
the album, and
Yep.
that's great to see
Yep.
someone who actually does believe in what he's doing. Once again, Jan says you also need to listen to it a few times to understand that album. I guess he's
Yep.
talking about trends, or he might even be talking about everybody's rocking. But I love this album.
Yep.
I
Yep.
love '50s music, '50s
Yep.
rock, where everything started
Yep.
for the music that we love, starting in the '50s, and to hear it in Neil Young style is
Yep.
really a joy to listen to.
Yep. No, I agree. I think I had to re-listen to it this week, and I played it twice, and I hadn't listened to it for a number of years, but it really stands out. Now it's funny because I recently watched the Elvis movie. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's quite good. And it was the music. I didn't care for the movie that much, but I thought it was like the way it was cut. I won't get into a full review, but the way it was cut, I didn't necessarily like it. I thought they could have included more actual footage, but the music was there, and the rockabilly type stuff that like Mystery Train that Elvis was doing is that's why I think I enjoyed this record even more revisiting it, because when it came out many years ago, I was like, okay, but I was in a different place at that time. I was in a very hard rock and metal area at that time, so it didn't really appeal to me. But re-listening to it this week, it would be a fun record to jam on, first of all, and just get your acoustic out and jam along. The songs are fun to sing. Jelly Roll Man, I was singing to my family the night after I listened to it a couple of times, just for fun. And it's just catchy, rockabilly type, early '50s, mid '50s type stuff. And it's a fun record, and it's just the right length also. The song, I'll also say that the songs are catchy. There's a lot of harmonies. It's a feel good record, and like there's not a bad song on the record at all. And I believe there's a video for a few of them, and Wondering comes to mind. There is a video. I remember that video when it came out, and it's quite good, and it's got that whole drive-in drive-in theater feel, guys and girls driving along in the band and stuff in a car, obviously, like a big long, car for a '50s type setting, right? So
Right, yeah.
yeah, it's got that whole feel to it. So it's a good video, and he was making a lot of videos at this time too, because video was obviously part of the industry in
Yeah.
the '80s. So, but no, I like this record, and also from a visual aspect as well. It's got a catchy looking cover. It's another one that jumps out at you, right? It's So,
yeah,
you
it's
know,
like
yeah,
no other Neil Young album cover, you know?
exactly. So,
Yeah,
you go on the Neil Young ride, as we've discussed. You
yeah,
each decade, you're going to experience different things, which is probably one of the main reasons we love him so much, right? So,
yeah, yeah. Of course,
yeah,
it's the following your favorite artist through their ups and downs.
right.
And
That's
if
right.
you give things another try,
Yep.
your downs might turn into ups, which
Yep.
I have learned on this trip going through his '80s stuff. At
Yes.
first, I was a
Exactly.
little apprehensive about it, but then after I was listening to that, I said, "Man, you know what? This is some pretty good stuff."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so
It is. It's catchy, and it's a fun record. I like it. Yeah.
yeah,
It,
yeah,
it
and
rocks. Mhm.
yeah, and again, like you said, it's a perfect length for that style of music.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
The next one we're gonna, you know, the executives at Geffen were complaining that, well, where's this country sound
Yep.
that you had in the '70s? Why don't
Yep.
you give us a country album? So he gives them the most country album a country album can be, and he does this on purpose. But some of it does remind me of the debut album that Jan was talking about earlier,
Yep.
because there
Yep.
are some really deep down country songs on here.
Yep.
So deep down that Waylon Jennings is on here,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so is Willie Nelson is also on here. They
Yep.
do duets with him.
Yep.
The tracks are just a little bit too country for my liking, because the thing about the older country stuff that Neil Young had, it was a revolutionary country rock style,
Yep.
like
Yep.
on Harvest, and even on, well, you can't really compare Harvest and After the Gold Rush, because they're completely different albums, even different styles.
Yep.
With all these different styles that Neil Young's doing in the '80s, shouldn't be that big of a surprise, because everything's almost different that he makes.
Yep. That's true. That's true.
You know, it shouldn't be that big of a surprise, but I guess it was just a big departure. But
Yep.
Old Ways was just okay for me. I did like a couple of tracks on here, especially the one where they mention Muhammad Ali, which I think is on Misfits,
Mhm.
and My Boy was also a good track. Whereas the Highway to Nine is a really good track as well. I
Yep.
like
That's a
that
good
track.
song. Yep.
And the one, I'm a big Willie Nelson fan. I love Willie Nelson. So of course I also liked Are There Any More Real Cowboys?
Yep.
And
That's a good song.
yeah. And Waylon Jennings, we all know, you can just hear Waylon Jennings on Get Back to the Country. So when I had initially listened to this album, I would pretty much just let it go and pass it up. But I really enjoyed it this time around.
Hmm.
Again, because I've been enjoying country more and more
Hmm.
of the '90s. So this was a really good surprise for me this last time around.
Hmm.
What did
Yep.
you think about Old Ways? Because it's a totally different album from anything else he's ever done.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned a surprise, because I got to say, I thought I was not familiar with the record, and I'm not sure I had ever listened to it. And I seem to remember I thought you had said in the past to listen to it and that you're familiar with it, but it must have been another record. So I listened to it and I was quite impressed with it. And it was very country. It
Yeah,
was like, okay, now it was almost like he said, okay, stop bothering me. Here's what I'm going to do now. You want country? I'll give you country. And he brought in, like, there's some, like you said, Willie Nelson's here and Waylon Jennings, and there's some big names on here,
yeah,
providing,
especially the band.
yeah, exactly. Um, and those first few songs on the first side, they really hit you. They're pure country songs, and I quite enjoyed them. Now, I knew two or three of the songs on here because they made it onto that bizarre CD he came out with in the '90s, I think, or '80s. I think it was the '90s. Um, Excursions into Alien Territory. Do you remember that?
No, I've never heard of it. I thought that you were talking about Lucky 13.
Yeah. Nope, nope, not Lucky 13, but it was a bizarre. It had some stuff from Reactor on there, from Trans. I'll have to pull it out and send you a copy of it because it's some of the songs that were on this record I knew. Like Once an Angel is on that CD, so I knew that song. Where's the Highway Tonight? I liked very much. I knew that song. I really liked the first few tracks that were there, as I mentioned, on side one. And so really it was like listening to a brand new record for me, even though it came out in 85, other than those tracks. And I got to say, I had not heard the song My Boy before. That's a very touching song. It's a beautiful piece. And I really liked that song. So that stood out for me as well. But it was kind of nice to revisit or visit this because I had honestly, I don't think I ever listened to this album in its entirety or at all. So, yeah. So it was great that we were able to do that through this,
Yeah, and this is going to be an album that I am going to revisit more and more because, at first, of course, when it came out, I wanted my Brandon Neil Young, and and now I know that I can't always have my way, but he always puts out quality work. Just does.
Yep,
And,
absolutely. No,
so,
that's
yeah,
very true.
I need to get more familiar with that one. So what do you think about it? Did you want to add more to Old Ways?
No, I don't think I have much more to say. I would like to revisit it as well, and I may pick up the CD or digital copy or something. Because I streamed it on YouTube, which is great. I mean, there's so many ways to get music these days. I know. And then you buy something you like. Not like the old days where you had to buy something which at that time we didn't mind buying records because they were $7, so you got the whole package, right? So then everything changed. We've talked about that before, but this album I would like to maybe get a copy and actually give it another visit.
Yeah,
quite enjoyed it. Excuse me.
Sure, you can find it used for a pretty good price since it's not one of his best ones, but then maybe because it's so unique, maybe it might be a little bit more. Now, this one I had bought on CD before, and then I found it on vinyl.
Wow.
And this next one, Landing on Water.
Excellent. I've never been able to find the vinyl, Andy, so good for you.
Yeah, it's also up here in gold. It's a promotional one as well.
Oh, okay.
But it's not a white label though. It's weird.
Oh.
It's not a white. It's on original Geffen Black.
Okay.
The labeling of it. Neil Young, Landing on Water. Once again, a whole different sound.
Yeah.
I want to call new wave.
Yep.
If I needed to choose something, some kind of genre, it would be new wave. Now, once again, even though it's new wave, you still have some of the players on here, and in fact, this is one of the first times that it's him and Nico Bolas, which would be called the Dealers, or what are they called? The Duo Dealers, him and Neil. I forgot
yeah, I know what you're saying. I can't remember.
The Volume Dealers.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
But this will be a 3-piece, actually, with all that stuff. You got Steve Jordan on drums and synthesizer, and Danny Kortchmar, which will be well known to be on such albums with Jackson Browne and with Don Henley. California 70s sound, which isn't far removed from Neil Young, so I'm pretty sure they've known each other for a long time. And Neil Young, and I'm pretty sure, they said, let's do something together. So they come up with Landing on Water.
Yeah.
The tracks on here that are some of my favorites, I would just say one word, all of them.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this album. I think it's fantastic. You got Weight of the World, Violent Side, Hippie Dream. I got a bad news beat. I mean, he just sings so differently on this album. It's a whole different album. And Touch the Night is such an 80s rocker.
Touch the Night, I think, had radio play too. It was the big hit.
It sounds perfect for 80s radio.
Yeah, it feels that way. And if I remember correctly, there was a radio edit Wouldn't be surprised because the song, at least Canadian radio loved at that time, loved their 3-minute songs, right? So
Yeah.
I think this touched the night clocks in at 4:30, so there was probably a radio edit. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure, just a gut instinct. But no, you're right. The tracks on here are really, really good. But you finish. I want to
And
before I
each
jump
track,
in.
it sounds like each track also has ends with Neil Young guitar solos on top of the
Yep.
synthesizer and drum
Yep.
machine work. And side two, people on the street need a place to go. Oh, that's such a great
Yeah,
track.
that's a
Hard
great
luck
track.
stories that I won't tell you, and I won't tell you mine. I got a problem.
Yep.
Pressure and Drifter.
Pressure.
On here. Such an underrated Neil Young album.
Yep.
Lightning on Water. I think it's one of his best albums, really.
It's so under the radar, this record. It's when it came out, I had the cassette, and I wish I still had it. So then I got the CD, but I played the cassette for a long, long time, and it was just so unique. I mean, what 1986 this came out. From a track perspective, Weight of the World, it just like each song is unique, but has an excellent feel and a beat, and it just picks you up. And you don't get 10. There's 10 songs on this release, and you don't get bored because each one is very unique, has a great unique sound.
Yeah.
Weight of the World, really interesting track. Violent Side, Hippie Dream. That's an interesting song, talking about. I think he's talking about leftover drug addiction, and the hippie dream, obviously, of peace and love and joy has been dissolving by this point in time, and talking about the people that are gone because of drug addiction and the people that survived. And I think that's what he's getting at, if I remember the lyrics correctly. Bad News Beat, like you said, that's very catchy. Touch the Night is a rocker. People on the Street, I gotta say that. Okay, so he was making videos in the 80s, and People on the Street, I tried to find it on YouTube, the video for this that was released at that time. It went to MTV and Canadian Video in Toronto here and stuff. The video, if you've ever seen it, and if I can find it, I'll send you a copy. It's one of the funniest videos I've ever seen.
Wow.
He hired a professional tap dancer, and they showed Neil with a top hat and a tuxedo and a cane, and he's dancing, and you can see him tap dancing, but they only shoot him from the waist up. And then they cut to a professional tap dancer in the same outfit doing professional tap dancing from the waist down. So all you see are the legs and the feet, and doing it right, and just the way they cut it, it's a riot. So I remember it. My wife would remember it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard or seen that at all.
No, it's one of the funniest videos because he was making these really crazy one-off videos in the 80s, almost because okay, we got to get something out there because video killed the radio stars, so to speak, right? That whole thing.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So there's that. If I can find that, I'll send it to you. Hard Luck Stories, a good song. I Got a Problem, really good song. Pressure is an excellent rocker too. It's very short, but it's a great song. I like that very much. But yeah, like I said, it was a good record. And excuse me. That's interesting what you said about Steve Jordan and Danny Horchmeyer.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, actually. I kind of recognized the name and didn't know that. So that's cool. Yeah, I was just looking at my notes on Facebook. Yeah, I mentioned that already. Not radio material or commercial success, but it has its moments for sure. And it's catchy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird because when you heard this album or still hear it, you think it's your own little piece of paradise. You know how you hear an album, you like it, but it's not popular and nobody talks about it.
Right.
But you hear it because you love it. It's like your little piece of paradise that you have. And that's what Lightning on Water is for me. It's a fantastic album. I think it's a really, and it's a big accomplishment for him. And not just that, I thought the production work on the album, and not just on this one, but his 80s output really gives a feel for what he was going for on each album. That's why the production was so important on each track.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. And this one was produced by him and Danny too. I see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and by Nico, recorded and mixed by Nico Bolas. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, like you said, it's production, and the artwork is unique. Obviously, like all his records, like you're looking at it, going, what's going on? But once again, you're drawn to it, and you're investigating the cover. Okay, what's this all about? So
Yeah, and then you get the inside of the album, and the plane is tilted down.
Yeah,
So
that's
you can
right.
see the picture of him. It's like
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's very cool. It's much better than the small one here. Yeah, see, that's cool.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's in the CD. It might be in the sleeve. No, see, that's not in the CD package. So
yeah. Well, I bought the CD first, and I just loved it so much I had to have it on here. So when I found it, I sure did jump on it.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and I have never seen that in a vinyl shop ever. So I think you got lucky on that one. Like you said, it might be a promo, but yeah. Excuse me.
This next one we're going to talk about from 1987. It's going to be a Neil Young and the Crazy Horse release.
Yep.
Life.
Yes, sir.
If you look at another album by Geffen, and if you look at the album cover, it looks like he's in jail, in prison.
Yeah, that's right.
Bars.
Yep.
And we'll let you know that how he felt during this time. Right here, he was just kind of drifting, wants to get rid of this whole Geffen stuff, which we know that Geffen was a fledgling record company that kind of hit it big right away.
Yep.
But Geffen Records was real big, but I think they were real big too quick, to the point that they got the name and everything was so synonymous so quickly.
Yeah.
Really thought that once something gets so big that quickly, they think they can do whatever they want, and of course, some things will fail in the Geffen camp. But let's get back to Neil Young and Crazy Horse Life. He brings back his old cohorts.
Yep, that's right. 1987, and yeah. So what are your thoughts on this record?
It's one of my least liked albums by Crazy Horse, in my opinion.
Right.
A lot of these songs just kind of go nowhere. It just they just meander around like Midwest Vacation is a pretty good track. Long Walk Home, I really do love the feel of that ballad. Inca Queen, it just I don't know about Inca Queen, but Side 2 again. A thing about the 1980s, Side 2 seemed to be the strong sides. Mm-hmm. Like Prisoners of Rock and Roll, When Your Lonely Heart Breaks, and We Never Danced were good tracks. A couple of these songs kind of have that feel of what's the name of that album? Sleeping with Angels.
Yeah, I never made that connection, but you're right. It kind of feels like that a little bit, yeah.
Like that darkness or that bleakness.
Yeah.
Which we loved in Crazy Horse 1970s albums, that bleakness.
Yeah.
But once again, the production on Geffen Records, the bleakness is too shiny.
Yeah.
That's what's wrong with this album. It's too shiny for the feel that it wants.
Right.
And that's where I get it just doesn't connect with me as other Young albums do.
Right.
What do you think about this album, Will?
Well, it's interesting. When this first came out, it's interesting to hear your opinion, because when this first came out, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But I was seriously into Neil Young at the time, right at my peak, I think. And since then, when I played it again this week, there's some tracks that do stand out, and there's some history behind this one. but it's not in my top. But it's not in my worst either. So it's hard for me to say. I do have some notes around it. So I'm kind of in the middle of the road now when I re-listen to it. Prisoner of Rock and Roll, I really like, and he takes a direct stab at the record label with the line "taking orders from record company clowns." He just right in there, So screw you,
and
or
thanks,
whatever.
and thanks for the money.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for everything. I'm on my way. Give me the check, and away I go. Now that song made it onto "Year of the Horse," and they do, if you recall, and they do an excellent live version of that. That's a rocker. So it is a rocker on this one too, this LP as well. Minnie's Vacation, I always thought was kind of unique because it had an interesting beat, interesting sound, interesting drum beat to it. Obviously, very political. I was reading about that. The first three songs are very political. Minnie's Vacation, Long Walk Home, which I actually think is a pretty good song. And I believe he did that on the Living with War tour. I think you saw that tour. I didn't see it, but that tour was very political.
I did not see the.
Oh, okay. You didn't see that? Yeah.
Nah.
Okay. So I believe that some of the material made it to that tour from this record, not all.
Right.
But songs. Sorry, go ahead.
The reason why I didn't want to go to that was because he was with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And I'm not a Crosby, Stills, and Nash fan at all.
Okay. I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay.
I was afraid I was going to hate half of what I was watching.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, I know. I only saw the trailer and a bit of a documentary on what was going on, and it seemed to piss off more people than create a good experience. But I did believe, if I remember correctly, that a couple of these sort of political-based songs made that tour. Long Walk Home, Around the World is okay. Inca Queen is interesting. It feels out of place as the fourth. All of a sudden you got these three harder songs in a sense, unique but political. It's good. It's the longest track on the record. It's 7:56. So it does feel a little bit strange there. Too Lonely is a good song. Prisoners of Rock and Roll we talked about. Crying Eyes. These are good rocking songs. They're good short 3-minute rocking songs. When Your Lonely Heart Breaks, I think, is actually a really nice tune, albeit maybe a bit long. Okay, and here's the thing about We Never Danced. So that was used in a movie. I don't know if you saw the movie, but it was called Made in Heaven from 1987. And the song was used as the main song for that movie, and Neil actually had a cameo in that movie. And it's a good movie, actually, and my wife and I enjoyed it very much. We saw it in the theater, and it's about a couple that the two of them are being born at different times, if I recall, and they never really meet up until much later in the movie. And not to spoil it, but they meet in heaven finally, sort of thing.
Oh, wow,
something like that. I'm trying to remember all the details, but the song is prominent throughout the movie, and it's a touching moment in the movie. And Neil actually does a cameo as a truck driver in the movie, and he has one line, and the guy, the main character, is walking down the street, and he's lost, and he's hitching, and Neil pulls up in his truck and says something like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I don't know," and he says, "Well, if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter what road you take." And it's such a Neil line to say, right? Yeah. And so anyway, the movie goes on from there. So that's what when I hear that song, I flash back to that scene and that movie. And that's We Never Danced. So that's the last piece on there. So it ends with two softer pieces. But overall, like I said, I give it a 5 out of 10 because it's very different. I think going back to Minnie's Vacation, there was a lot of stuff going on at that time in that period that is reflective in that song. And so he kind of covers that a bit, and he mentions quite a bit of that that's taking place in the world at that time in his lyrics. So I don't know. It's a love-hate record for me. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. It's in the middle.
And I want to touch on this about Minnie's Vacation. It's such a political song. One of the most political, straight to the point, because he name check's No More Gaddafi,
Right.
which was a big part of the Libya U.S.
Yep.
fight there in '85
Yep.
and '86, and we went and bombed his compound, and we saw all this on live TV. This was, now war and everything that happens in real time, we can see anytime we want. But at that time, it was breaking news in the major networks around the world, and I remember that. I might have been 12 years old, and we only had one TV set in the house, so we all watched TV together, and that's what it was about Omar Gaddafi, and that's what that song reminds me of that time.
Yep.
And that
Absolutely.
might be my standout tracks on this because it reminds me of a time of a newsmaker when I was a boy going into junior high and that going on.
Yep.
You know,
Exactly.
so
Yeah. It was one of those moments in your life that you do remember and you can associate the song to it. I know. I remember when the Gulf War broke out very clearly where I was, what I was doing.
Yeah.
I don't have a song associated with it. And of course, we all remember 9/11 where we were. And, those moments in history, like this moment that you mentioned, they stay with you. And so that song reminds you. I know. And this song that you mentioned, the Mideast Vacation, it has a dark feel to it, very much. And he's making some bold statements in that song, like you said. So
yeah.
It's an interesting. You kind of feel where the record's going, right from the beginning, right? That's,
even the music for Mideast Vacation, Vacation, it's a violent music.
That's right. That's right.
The cymbals, the guitar crunching, the bass line.
Just the lyrics,
violent side, and it's a very alarming opening track. It really is.
I kicked him in the belly, and now my vacation is complete. And just if you recall the lyrics, stuff like that, it's a violent song in that sense.
Yeah.
So it's aggressive.
And he does it with such. It didn't have to be vulgar, but it was the imagery that he was putting in your head.
Right. That's right.
That called to mind war.
Talking about Air Force One and the whole bit. And that's why I say Inca Queen is so out of place here.
Yeah.
in the fourth,
It's a beautiful song.
Yeah. It is. It's a beautiful song, and it's a long song, and I love long songs. I love prog. I love lengthy pieces of music.
Yeah.
It just feels out of place there. He would have been maybe better to move Too Lonely up and then open side 2 with Inca Queen maybe, and kind of separate it out like that. But hey,
Yeah, kind of what we talked about earlier albums. Spreading side 1 and side 2, separating each sides, because Inca Queen, it doesn't belong there, and by the time you get to Inca Queen on side 1, you kind of lose interest because it doesn't fit in at all.
No,
and it's going to go on and on for a good amount of time.
Yeah, no, that's right, exactly. And then you kind of you enjoyed that, and then you pick up side 2 with Too Lonely, right? So yeah, at least I think that I have a CD. I don't know. Too Lonely, open side 2. I'm assuming.
Oh, I'm side 2.
Yeah,
it's opened by
Okay.
It's opened by Too Lonely.
Okay, yeah.
Side 2.
Which is Too Lonely for rock and roll. I forget how that goes, but it's a rocker song. It's a harder song. Too Lonely. Yeah, Too Long. Okay, I can hear it now in my head. Yeah, so it's a rocker. Prisoners, Crying Eyes. Yeah, and then it gets soft again. So kind of interesting. Maybe if he had put all the soft stuff on B side, nobody would listen to B side. So he's got to shake it up.
So you got to mix them up. But just the Inca Queen, it's almost an epic track.
Yeah, right. That's Lewis.
One that doesn't even sound as a cohesive piece together.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I got to say, I forgot to mention earlier, I saw a lot of these tours too. Because I was at a peak of Neil Young, so almost everything. Not Hawks and Doves, and not Reactor actually, but I think Trans. Shocking Pinks, Life. Definitely saw Crazy Horse, the Life tour, Landing on Water, whatever his tours. I don't know if he toured on all these records, but I saw him about 4 or 5 times in the '80s. Yeah, and Blue Notes tour. We'll get to that, but yeah, and because my wife and I were going to a lot of concerts at that time, and that was my peak of my Rush period as well. I saw a lot of Rush shows, and then I didn't see Rush at all in the '90s, except for maybe Roll the Bones in '91, '92, and then they disappeared. Obviously, came back, and then I saw a lot of Rush right till the end. So but I've always had the luxury of seeing Rush here because I'm so close to Toronto. So always guaranteed. We were always a guaranteed show, right? And at this time, Neil would play. I don't know if he was still living in Canada at this point. Maybe not, based on some of the contents of these songs. Speaking about U.S. Relations subject matter. He may have been already living in California at this time. I'm not sure. But he during the '80s he played Toronto a lot, and I saw a lot of tours, which is interesting. I'll tell you a story about the Blue Notes when we get there. So
Sure, of course. And I didn't get to start seeing Neil Young live until the 2000s.
Okay, right.
When I started watching him, and since then I've seen him. Well, the first time I saw him was in '99 for a solo tour. And then I saw him again in 2003 for the Greendale.
Okay.
And then I saw him again for the what's the album that was produced by Daniel Lanois?
Oh, Lanois.
Yeah, Lanois.
Yes. Yeah.
As well.
Interesting.
Yeah, Lanois was a pretty good, but we will touch on that when we get to that.
Very
but right
good.
now, the next album, another genre bender. Now he's doing the blues. Neil Young, Blue Notes.
Yes.
For you. Also won the video for This Notes for You was banned by MTV, but also won for Video Music of the Year.
Yes.
MTV. So go figure that one out.
Exactly. I know.
And then they give it an award.
Yeah. It's so bizarre, I know. And he was making such a statement on corporate sponsorship.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my son. Very cool. Great video. Love the backgrounds. Excellent. I told him we were on tonight, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to come in and check you guys out." So
awesome.
Excellent. Cool. But yeah, go ahead, Andy. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Neil Young and the Blue Notes. This Notes for You. There's a couple of tracks on here that I do like, that do stand out to me. At first, I didn't, because I don't like the blues. Because this is not Stevie Ray Vaughan blues. This is not the blues, the rock and blues that we're used to and love so much. This is going to have horns in the whole production. It's not a 3 or 4 piece blues at all.
No, that's right.
It's not Johnny Winter. It's not ZZ Top. It's your full blown out blues band. With that being said, when Neil Young Archives came out with the Blue Note Cafe, I bought it from the neilyoung.com, and they also sent you a promotional calendar for that year with it was of Neil Young, and it had all 12 months.
Oh wow! Okay.
Like a calendar poster.
Yeah.
Wow,
cool. That's very cool. I have the recording, and I really enjoyed it when I got that too.
Yeah.
A friend of mine gave me a copy, and I really enjoyed the live performance of that record. It was very cool. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on this record? Do you like it? Because it's very different.
It's very different. Again, the production was great.
Yes.
Maybe just a little bit too slick for a blues album, but once again, this is going to be done by the Volume Dealers. They will even start saying their names up here. The Volume Dealers, Neil Young and Nico Bolas. 10 Men Working. This Notes for You, which is great. Married Man. I really like that track. Married Man. and Twilight is a nice. I don't even want to call it a ballad because it's not. It's a blues song. You
Yeah.
know, so a slow ballad becomes a blues song on this. So this is okay for me. Like what you thought about life, it's a hit or miss for you. It's about the same for me.
Right.
But if I
Right.
want to listen to this notes for you, I will grab the Blue Note Cafe CD
Right. Right.
and that instead.
It's been that interesting to get the live performance. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're like me, where you're partial to live recordings as well. Like live
Yeah.
recordings are like something I collect aside from records and music. I always look for a live recording. So
Yeah.
some people hate them. I like them very much. It's interesting though. This record is, like you said, it's not Johnny Winter or Texas Blues. It's not BB King Blues. It's not Stevie. This is power, what they call power swing. It's big band blues. It's got all the horn. It's got the horn section. It's got the full package. I like it. I saw the tour, as I mentioned. I find with the LP, I get about 3/4 of the way through and I've had enough. I will skip forward because I've had enough of the songs. Although there are some excellent. Married Man is a great song. There's some excellent. This Note's for You. Obviously, really good song. But I just feel like there are quite a lot of songs on there, and I don't have the track list in front of me because I don't own it. But and I was surprised that I don't own it because like I said, I saw the tour. And it's just something I thought I had in my collection. I didn't, so I had to stream it. But there are quite a lot of. I think there's about 10 tracks on there.
Yeah,
maybe a little more.
There's 10 tracks.
Yeah. So after about 8 tracks, I'm ready for it to end, sort of thing. And it's like, okay, I've had my fill. They're not that they're bad songs or anything, but yeah, it's kind of it's interesting. But it's a good, for what it is. It's a good record, and it's like you said, it's well produced. I love the live show too. It's just got that big band feel. And this is one of the tours I saw at C&E Grandstand, which is no longer there, and that was part of the Canadian National Exhibition. The Grandstand was an outdoor venue. I think we paid $8 for the seats, and we used to see a lot of shows there at this time. And Neil was one of them. Now, when he did this, he had the full. When we saw this tour, he had the full orchestra with him too. So he had the horn players, maybe not the full that he had in the studio, but he had a set of horn guys and horn players and the whole bit. But This Note's for You, he played 3 times. Neil has always done what he wants to do. He did an electric version with the band. He did a version on piano, and he did an acoustic version. So he played that. He was pushing that song, and he played it 3 times during that show, which was cool because there were 3 sets. There was the big band set, classic Neil opening a show with an acoustic set, and then moving over to piano, right? So 2 sets technically, but it was very cool to see that. And I remember the tour being very good. We very much enjoyed it. So that's my memory of that era for '88, right? So
yeah, that's for '88. So let me ask you, on this Blue Notes tour, did he play old classic Young with the Blue Note sound?
No, I'm trying to, and I'd have to punch up he did a lot of the record. I remember that.
Okay.
He did some classics, if I recall. I'd have to go to setlist.com and check it out because my memory's not there. But he did Comes a Time. He did some acoustic pieces. He did, maybe Heart of Gold and some of his classics.
Yeah. But without the Blue Note sound?
No, acoustically to open the show, sort of thing.
Okay.
Then he moved into the more big band Blue Note type sound. It was interesting. But he had the full blues outfit like you see on the cover. He was decked out with the hat and the whole bit, and but he had a guitar strap, obviously, that was very from the 70s, and kind of a hippie guitarist, like a Jimi Hendrix type thing. And he looked super cool. He had the Blue Notes outfit, but classic Neil Young stuff. It was really it was a visually good tour as well, and it sounded amazing for live performance. For an outdoor live performance, it sounded great. I remember that.
you see,
So
and again, we're talking about when he goes on tour, he has an album, and he does that whole persona and gives the fans a whole package.
hmm hmm
Oh wait, when you go see Neil Young, you're not gonna say, "Oh, I've already seen this a thousand
yeah,
times." Like we've gone to go see bands several times, and it's the
yeah,
same thing. It's the same lighting. They got the same costume on, or
yeah,
they don't even have costume on. It's the same old T-shirt
yeah.
and
That's
jeans.
right.
Neil Young
Yeah,
really does it up for everything, different, um, for every different. What's the word I'm looking for? Project.
yeah,
He really
yeah,
gives it the whole persona, which is really really cool, man.
yeah. Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add about the Blue Notes?
No, I don't think so. I wanted to tell you that story about the tour, and I like it. Like I said,
Yeah.
I could probably skip a few tracks when I'm listening to it, but no. Overall, I think it's a pretty solid record. It is also reminiscent, not reminiscent, but it is another example of what he was doing, different things through the '80s. So many different types of music, right? Through and establishing all these different sounds. He's really going through personality thing with his image. And obviously there were external sources, and external factors that were affecting that. But look at all the records we've discussed so far. They're all uniquely different, which is cool.
And this just popped into my head. What David Bowie was praised for, Neil Young was crushed for.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When
Yeah,
Neil Young was a lot more
yeah,
interesting music,
yeah,
in my
yeah,
opinion, a
yeah.
lot more interesting.
You can look at like Russia's evolution too. What they
Yeah,
did, they went through their synth period in the '80s. A lot of fans that were with them in the '70s were like, "No, this isn't working for me." And it's unfortunate because I've always said that the ones that split in the '80s because they didn't like the sound, they missed out on some of the hard rock albums that came back in the '90s, like
yeah,
Counterparts, Roll the Bones, Counterparts, and then obviously Test for Echo in '96. Those are hard rock albums. Like Counterparts is a grunge record. It's one of the best, and I love it. And I know people that was like, that's it. After the '80s synth stuff for Rush came out, it was like, I'm done. I'm not listening. They missed out on a lot of good stuff. And years later, they listened to it. It was like, oh my God, where was I?
yeah.
Why wasn't I listening to this? Right? Because they really came back to that rock sound in
Yeah,
the
I really
'90s. So
enjoy Roll the Bones. I
yeah,
enjoy Roll the Bones.
yeah,
I got that one on CD. I really do
that's
love that album.
that's a good one. The production's a bit weak on that, but it never bothered me. I think it's a great record. So,
Right.
but yeah, no Blue Notes. It is what it is. It stands alone for sure.
So after all this hoopla of the '80s, he leaves
Yes,
Geffen. Geffen wants to
yes.
sue him because he's been making non like Neil Young sounding albums. So what's he do? The first thing he does when he leaves Geffen, he goes back to Reprise, releases an album called Freedom,
Mhm.
and releases one of the most Neil Young sounding albums of all time.
Yep, brilliant.
He recorded songs that Geffen's been begging for him to do.
Yep,
This
yep,
is a hard rock and roll, country rock album,
yep,
the most cohesive piece of music since his '70s output.
yep.
And this is all that Geffen's been asking for, and he
That's right.
saves it for Reprise.
Yep.
Classic, classic
It's
Neil.
true. Screw you. I made the record you want. I'm taking it. I'm doing it with these guys. My
Yeah,
original label. Yep.
I'm going back home
Yep. That's
where
right.
I belong in the first place. And it is
Yep.
just hilarious the way that Neil Young does what he wants to do, sticks it to the man,
Yep.
and gives the fans what he wants. This album
Yep.
here, Freedom, of course, and again, just like he goes back to Rust Never Sleeps, and he bookends
Yep.
with an acoustic version
Yep.
and a full band sound or
Yep.
hard rock sound of the same song. With live with Rust Never Sleeps, it was
Yep.
Into the Black, Into the Blue. This
Yep.
time he does it with Rockin' in the Free World, which
Yep.
I love
That's right.
both versions of Rockin' in the Free World.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
it's amazing. But we're gonna go through these songs. Crime in the City, fantastic acoustic tale, but I like
Yep.
it better on Weld, on a live setting with him
Interesting.
crunching
Yep.
on that song.
Yep. Yep.
But also Don't Cry, Hanging on a Limb.
Yep.
In fact, he even brings back Linda Ronstadt
Yeah.
back,
Right.
back for that. And maybe a bigger jab. You know what?
Yep.
Let me bring Linda Ronstadt so I
Yep.
can have that smooth backing vocals.
Yep. That's right.
And that's great. And El Dorado, we know, is was also on a EP.
Yep.
And side two, Someday, is just a great song. He also does a cover on here called On Broadway.
Yep. In classic Neil form. Yep.
Yeah. And it's a really cool track. Wrecking Ball, such a great ballad. Such a slow ballad, Wrecking Ball. Now we know that Too Far Gone on here. This was the first time you heard it on
Yep.
Too Far Gone, but then as he's releasing the Neil Young archives, we know Too Far Gone could have been released in the mid 70s.
Yep.
And it's a
Yep.
beautiful written song. And then you close it off with Rockin' the Free World. Again, the Volume Dealers are producing this, which is Neil and Nico. Man, this was such a great album to end
Yep.
the whole decade
Yep.
with Freedom. And
Yep.
it was fantastic. What do you think about this album?
You know what? I can't come up with much more. You hit it on the head because it's a brilliant record. 1989. There's so many good. This album. There's not a bad song on this record. It plays well from front to back, and there's some excellent guitar work. I will say some electric and acoustic guitar work on here. The production value is amazing.
It's
The
got
sounds, yes, it has that feel. It is well done and mixed. Yeah, Crime in the City. You know, I like both versions. I love the electric hard version, obviously on Weld, which really brings it out. But I love this version as well. Don't Cry, My Sweet Love. That's a great song. Hanging on a Limb, beautiful piece, beautiful song. El Dorado, what a great story, you know. So it just takes you to that setting. Classic Neil's songwriting, and he just creates that story and that mood and the soundscape. It's excellent,
and it harkens back to Tonight's the Night kind of feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Tonight's the Night.
Yep. Someday, you know, someday, and it reminds me of the song a little bit. I'm trying to hear it in my head, but Someday, it reminds me a little bit of the song on Harvest Moon. I'm going to sit down and write a long letter. It just kind of reminds me of that a little bit, you know. Another great song. On Broadway, I love his version on Broadway. It's a classic Neil. You know, give me some of that crack and all that stuff. You know, just talking about Hollywood and everything, and just adding his own interjections. Yeah, Wrecking Ball, excellent. No More. I was just listening to that before we went live. That's an excellent song. All about excellent guitar work on that. No More, all about, you know, drug addiction and wanting more and more and more, and then quality versus quantity and that whole piece, and really interesting. Too Far Gone, excellent song, classic, and Rockin' in the Free World closes out. So yeah, he had radio hits on this, obviously. Rockin' in the Free World, huge hit for him. That's still being used today. People are stealing that song without permission to use it. You know, like it's so popular. You know, this is an excellent record, and another one that you can play if you play guitar. It's a great song to play along with. I like a lot of the songs on here. Some of the songs, like El Dorado, there's some interplay between acoustic and electric. And I love when he's doing the multi-track stuff like that, because he's so talented. He'll play the rhythm, and then he'll play solo acoustic, but then the electrics in the background. I love what he does on those longer pieces like that. I love this record. I just wrote in my notes. All I said was the best. Highlighted tracks are Hanging on a Limb for me, El Dorado, and No More. But I love the whole record.
Yeah, my soundtracks are going to be both versions of "Rockin' the Free World," "Crime in the City," "Hanging on a Limb." Um, oh, geez, what's that? I was just talking about that because I liked this before I knew that it was a '70s track. "Too Far Gone."
Mm-hmm.
You know, after one night, I wanted to marry you. You know, just you know,
Yeah.
just a great song. So yeah, freedom. Everything ends on freedom.
It
You
does.
know,
Such a turbulent decade, and then to open with Hawks and Doves,
yeah,
and then close, which was really the beginning. We mentioned the split, so you had the stuff that for us side one of Hawks and Doves recorded in the '70s, and then the '80s material, a little more aggressive on that record, a little more outspoken about certain subjects, and then just everything that led up after that, leading up to this. And then he comes out, he closes out the decade with this, and then what comes after this? What does he open the '90s with?
oh yeah, one of his
Right?
best albums of all time.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, no, love this record. I can't say really anything more. I saw this tour as well, and it was very memorable. And he did a lot of these songs live, like El Dorado he did live, and it's just excellent tour. Great album.
Yeah, and we are going to rank each album
Yeah.
of our liking. We'll go that, ladies and gentlemen, we are not going to let the '90s episode be too far in between. That should be coming up soon whenever we get time. Hopefully within a month or two. Hopefully we could touch on the '90s because that decade was just amazing
Yeah.
for Neil
Yeah.
Young. Just amazing.
A lot of output. Yep.
A lot of up and barely any downs during
That's
that
right.
whole decade. It was one of his strongest. Do you want to go back and forth, or do you just want to rattle them off?
It doesn't matter. We can go back and forth if you want. That works fine.
Since there's 9, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is Old Ways.
Mm-hmm.
Only because I didn't really want to rank it because I'm still discovering it. It was my first listen, really. But there's some things that definitely stood out for me, so I'd like to revisit it. So I put it at the bottom because I wasn't that familiar with it.
Yeah, my number 9 is going to be Trance
because
of the vocoder and a couple of things that could have been better,
right?
If he wasn't too over ambitious with what he was trying to do. I think his ambitiousness got the best of him on that one.
Right.
What's your number 8?
Number 8's Blue Notes. Only because it's a mid-range record for me. I like it, and but I have others that are my favorites. So it kind of fell in at the bottom. But if I'm in the mood for power jazz, power blues, that's the record I would go to for sure. But I would, as we said, I would go to the live show.
Yeah, that's the one I would pull out too. My number 8 is going to be Old Ways by Neil Young.
Okay, interesting.
I picked that one as my number 8 because I like country, and also it's got the great Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings on here, and a couple of songs are pretty good. Maybe if they weren't that country, it would have been higher, but that's where I put it. What's your number 7?
Number 7 is Shocking Pinks. I'm sorry, it's called Everybody's Rocking. I call it Shocking Pinks, the Shocking Pinks record. Only because it's so different from everything else. I like it very much, but I have others that are over it. And it's a mood-based record. If you want to be in the mood for it to listen to it. If you're not in the mood for that type of material, you're not going to enjoy it. It's that simple. So, if you're in the mood for it, it's a great record. It rocks hard. And I like it. It's unique, as we discussed, but that's where it falls for me.
For me, number 7, I'm going to go with Life, just because what we had talked about, it's a little discombobulated.
Yeah.
It doesn't flow well at all.
No.
It's like
No.
a bunch of ideas that he put them where they don't belong,
Yeah.
and it
Right.
really does interrupt the flow of what could have been.
Yeah.
Life will be my number 7.
Right. Cool. So number 6, I put Landing on Water
Mm.
because it's up there for me. It's not at the bottom. As we discussed, it's different. It's unique. The songs are quite catchy. But it's got some. It's not something I would grab initially right away. I might pull a couple tracks off of it into a playlist, but it's not something I'm going to throw on and spin the whole package.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And my number 6, you went with Landing on Water. I'm going to go with the Blue Notes. This note
Oh,
for you.
okay. Yeah.
Because I have been buying jazz albums and big band jazz of the 40s
Hmm.
and 50s.
Hmm.
So I've been listening to that. It's nothing like this. No, it's
Right.
very bombastic.
Right.
But this has a nice little undertone to it. So that's going to be my number 5. No, number 6.
6. Right. Makes sense. Number 5, I chose Life, just because it kind of fits in the middle for me. There's some interesting, catchy material on there. There's quite a bit about it I like, but as we discussed, there's some political. It's kind of broken up for me, the political side, and then there's some other different types of songs.
Right.
So it kind of fits in there, but I do like it because I liked it so much when it first came out, and that's the thing. Like I said, I had the cassette many years ago, and I played it quite a bit. 'Cause I bought it, I bought it when it came out. That was the thing. It was brand new when it came
Yeah.
out. I bought it when it came out, I should say, and that's when I got into it. So it kind of fits in the middle for me. So that's where I ranked it.
Well, like you said, it's 5 out of 10 for you.
Yeah,
So
exactly,
there it is.
exactly.
My number 5 is going to be Hawks and Doves for me.
Ah, interesting.
Because side one is almost a classic side.
Yeah, yeah,
It really is.
yeah,
And side 2 is just so completely different.
yeah, yeah,
Just completely different. But this could have been, side 1 for you, Neil Young, um, fans out there. Could have been during the homegrown era.
yeah.
And,
Right,
and we all know what that is.
right.
So that's
That's
why
right.
because side 1 is so strong.
Right, right. I think it's a good ranking for you for sure, because it does feel like two records to me. Revisiting it this week,
Yeah.
even though I love both sides, and it's funny. I played it for my son a couple months ago. We were punching the bag over here, and
Yeah.
he enjoyed it. He liked side 1 better than side 2 because of the storytelling, and he really liked Captain Kennedy because it was about World War II, and he's very much into World War II and World War I research and that sort of thing. Yeah. So he really liked this. The guy said, "Listen to the lyrics on this song," and he enjoyed it. He thought it was interesting because it is very historical, right? So
Yeah.
well written song, very well. It's classic Neil, folk writing. So anyway, go ahead, Andy.
That's
What are we
awesome
at?
the way that your son pinpoints about what the song Captain Kennedy is all about.
Yeah,
That's fantastic for him to pinpoint that out.
yeah, he's very much into the military history and stuff like that. So yeah, yeah.
Hey, so I think it's your turn, right?
Yeah, you're right. Number 4, I chose Trans, just because it's up there for me. Because when it came out, I really was like, "Hey, this is cool. It's different," and nobody had, other than a few bands, Devo, Kraftwerk, which I didn't know them well. This was kind of unique for me, and I thought this album really sounds different. But I'll say I like the songs that he designed for this record, not the remakes of his other material.
Yeah.
Those are the songs I like. They sound different, and now understanding what he was trying to do and experimentation with sound technology and that sort of thing. He went further than that later after he did this. And I was reading about that a couple of years ago. He developed some technology to help his son
Yeah, he did.
and other kids. Yeah. So, everything he does for a reason, right?
Yep.
So, which I think is impressive. So that's where it is, and that's why it's number 4 for me, just because it's a cool record in that sense. It's very different.
And that's another thing about Neil Young. When
Excuse me.
you're a Neil Young fan, you know Neil Young
Right.
because he lets you know who he is and what he stands for. These aren't just albums or songs
No,
that
that's right.
he sings or plays. This
Yeah.
is the life that he has that he puts out there for you to follow. That's the great thing, not just
Yep.
about Neil Young, but that's the great thing about rock and roll.
Hmm.
When you
Hmm.
follow these artists or these bands, it's because of who they are and what they stand for. Country songs or pop songs, they're given to them. Production, they all sound the same.
Hmm.
But
Yep.
especially bands in the 70s, 80s, and 90s
Yep.
of rock and roll, you follow their persona and you follow who they are
Hmm.
because their
Yep.
music stands for themselves.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
That's why I love rock and roll so much. My
Hmm.
number 4, I'm going to go with Neil Young and Shocking Pinks doing his
Oh,
tribute to the 50s.
very good.
Um,
Excuse me.
I like the color of the wall. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool, man. And
Hmm.
his hair slicked back with his sideburns, and he's got the 3-piece suit
Yep.
and the Chuck Berry shoes and everything.
Oh yeah, I just
And I'm a big 50s music guy, so it's pretty cool to hear Neil Young play that
yeah.
type of music.
Yeah, no, you're right. He looks cool on that record, and
Yeah.
it's just a cool looking package. I think so. Makes sense. So number 3, Reactor, and I love Reactor. It stands alone, and but there's a couple albums that are above it, and I think you and I have very similar tastes. We're pretty close with our rankings and our appreciation of Neil overall, not just the '80s decade. But Reactor, like I said, I wish if I could get Crazy Horse together and get them to tour one more time and say play Reactor, because do a second set like Rush did with Moving Pictures. Just play Reactor because people would love to see that, and at least I would. I know, but yeah, it's up there for me for sure. I didn't choose it as my number 2 or 1, but just because, but it falls in very high ranking for me. It's just a good record, and it's I don't know, there's something that draws me to it as well. It's aesthetically interesting looking record, and I don't know if you noticed, you've seen my wall, most of my records are red for some reason, so I'm attracted to red records. I have Hold Your Fire, Neil Young, Hemispheres Red, everything's red. Rush did a lot of red stuff, so I don't know what it is about
Did
that.
they
So
have
maybe
a lot
that's
of red vinyl?
what's that.
Rush released a lot of red vinyl.
Yeah, well, they did the Hemispheres Red. That was the original Canadian pressing in '78.
Okay.
But they just they've written about use the word red a lot. Red lenses. They hold your fire. All of that. There's a theme there. For me, I don't know why. I just like the look of it. I like the look of Reactor. I like the
Yeah.
look of those type of pressings. Hold Your Fire. I like it because it's simple, and then the 3 balls, right? So I just, I like those kind of records that stand out. So, and aside with Reactor, it's just a good hard rocking record.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Right.
as we mentioned earlier, side 2 stands alone from side 1. Side 2 is just as great. So
Yeah, it really is. That just
uh,
because when side 2 on an album is good, that just shows you how much great stuff is on there.
right, that's right, exactly. So what's
Uh,
your
my number
number?
3,
Yeah.
Reactor, from the
Interesting. Okay.
that's the one we matched on so far was going to be
Yeah.
the Reactor one.
Yep.
This, we've already talked about it. It's just a great hard rocking album.
Yep.
That the kind of album that sounds like early '80s
Yep.
by Neil Young and Crazy Horse. So yeah,
Yep.
Reactor
Yep.
is my number 8. Is my
Right.
number 3.
Cool.
What's your
We
number?
agree on
I'm
that.
really curious what your number 2 is. Oh, you know what? I remember now.
You know, you can figure it out, and I think we're going to come out the same on one possibly. Number two for me is Hawks and Doves, just because it's up there, and I love that side one so much, and I love side two as well. I think it's unique. I've always liked that. And it's a record I enjoyed playing along with when I first started playing guitar.
Yeah.
I remember when it came out, I bought it obviously and played with it, and that's kind of one of the records. That first side for sure, the acoustic stuff was one of the reasons I wanted to play. So that's when I started to learn from Neil. Neil was my first teacher. That's why I like that record so much. That's why it's up there. Yeah.
You have put this one kind of low, but I love this record, and I've already talked about how much I love it. Landing on Water is my number two.
Interesting. Yeah.
I remember when I bought the CD, and when I moved east in '99, I was just getting my cousin into Neil Young, and I said, "Man, I just bought this one from the '80s." He said, "Oh, dude, let me listen to it." I said, "Yeah, sure, of course." He said, "Oh, man, this sucks." yeah, it's not your everyday Neil Young.
No, that's
For me,
right.
it was a very high one. So, Landing on Water, track by track, it's solid. The songwriting is a little bit more easier accessible.
Yep. Right.
The songs are a little bit more in the vein of a regular pop rock songs
Right. Yeah.
compared to everything else that he's done. So number two, Landing on Water. What's your number one album by Neil Young of the 1980s?
Yeah, my number one is Freedom. I had to go with Freedom. Just as we discussed, it's such a good record. It closes out that decade so well, and it's a pure Neil Young record. It's top. It's up there with some of his other peaks. If you were to look at his peak records of each decade, it's up there for sure. For me, the production, the songwriting, the guitar work, the musicianship all around, it's a great record. It's something that you can play from front to back and without stopping. It's just a beautiful record. It's so well done. And the storytelling. That's one thing I've always been attracted to Neil's storytelling, the songwriting, and he just creates these lands that these books basically in music, and it tells whether it's a long story or a short story. It just takes you there. He takes you there, and that's what he does with this song, like El Dorado, as an example. So number one for me.
Yep. I'm gonna have to agree. My number one as well is going to be Freedom.
Right.
It's a great album. We just went through the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the back of it. We just went through the tracks, and we told our listeners of why it's a good album.
Mm-hmm.
He just put so much of himself back into this and released the music that we love to listen to by him again. So
it's
love.
What's that?
We talked about Ways of Love off of this.
Oh, yeah.
The way his acoustic guitar transcends the sound, and it just goes down.
Yeah.
It's an amazing sounding record.
Yeah, no, it is. And I'm, on that song, I don't know what key he's playing in. He has different tunings, obviously, for his work. But yeah, I'm not sure, but it's a great song. There's just so much great material on that record. Love it. That's obviously we both agree on that. So it's interesting that it closed out as you said earlier, he closed out the 80s with this masterpiece.
Yeah.
And said, back on his original label. So he went through this turbulent time, tried different things, did different things, and then ended up back, 10 years later, I'm home again, like you said. Perfect way of saying it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so odd that he would release this album at that time. I'm pretty sure people are, well, what the hell is he going to do now?
Yeah.
Wow, a Neil Young record. I mean, and he's been like that almost ever since.
Yeah, I was reading he had planned to release. They didn't say Ragged Glory, but he had already put some of that together. I think because what I was reading was that he had something very hard. He called it a hard rocker from beginning to end that he wanted to release, and that was, excuse me, for whatever reason, that was Freedom came out. He released Freedom instead, and I think he was waiting on to release Ragged Glory because that's the first record of the '90s. So, but he had that ready, and I think he had it in mind to release. So he could have made a different move there, and that would have been interesting. Would have been a more hard rock feel. Whereas this album has a different feel. You know, Freedom has a totally different feel, right? So.
Oh yeah, it's a more quiet album. Well, not more. I mean, it's definitely a more quiet album.
Yeah.
But still done in the Neil Young mode.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's interesting, you know. I meant to ask you, here's a story, and I think I told you before. What was the record that came out after Harvest? What came out?
After Harvest? It was weird.
Yeah. I remember.
He made that Journey Through the Past, which is that double live album.
Yeah.
And then Time Fades Away, which was a live album.
Time Fades Away. That's right. That's okay. I was trying to think.
Yeah, so he made a lot of
did he do something weird after that?
He would come out with for Harvest.
Okay. Because I read an article that said after the success of Harvest, he went over to tour Australia, and he played, I think it must have been Time Fades Away, which I'm surprised if that's the case. I'll have to go find the article, but whatever it was he played, whatever record he had just released was so different from his Harvest success. And at that time, it was late 70s, maybe 1980. I don't know. It must have been late 70s. He played Australia. He played stuff that was not Harvest. They were expecting the Harvest Neil Young, and they went nuts and tore the stadium apart. They had to stop the show. He had to leave. They had to rush him out in the band. They had to close the show down, arrest people, and like they went crazy. They were tearing the chairs out, and then, like they wanted Harvest Neil Young, right? And I think that was around the beginning of that period for him when he was really moving away. The fame was overwhelming, you know.
Yeah, and it's not what he wanted. So he made the right move to do what he did, so that he can have the freedom to do what he wants. But are you familiar with Time Fades Away?
Yeah, I am.
I mean, it's a beautiful album. I mean,
I love it. Yeah, it's a great record.
Live as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And at different points of that tour, which is probably the one that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking it was. So, yeah, exactly. And it's just, I don't know what went wrong, but they didn't appreciate it when he went over there. So, you know, but
and then came the other 3 albums, which is called the Ditch Trilogy.
Right. That's right.
Which will let you kind of know that he was in a very depressing mode because of the reaction towards his music.
Yeah,
you know, the highs and lows of after the Gold Rush and Harvest, and then people complaining of not getting what they want from him. Wow,
that's right.
Wow, if you really think about that, that sounds horrible of fans getting upset because you're not delivering what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. It's based on the commercial success, right? So, no, you're right. And those Ditch Trilogy records, Tonight's the Night,
On the Beach,
great, and Zuma. Thank you. Yeah, excellent records. I know we covered the '70s Neil before. Those are amazing records. The Tonight's the Night live disc that I told you about, that's also very good. Tuscaloma, or I think it's called Tuscaloma. A very, very excellent show.
I got this Tuscaloosa,
that's it. Yeah.
Which only has one track. No. Yeah, it only has one track on here from what's the one? Tonight's the Night. It's only got Look Out Joe.
It's a different show then. Give me a second. I'm just gonna open my
Yeah,
cabinet. One
because
sec.
here this has here we are in the years after the gold rush, out on the weekend, harvest, oh man, heart of gold, time fades away. Look out, Joe, new mama, Alabama, and don't be denied. Don't be denied. That's a
Don't Be
great
Denied is from
from time
Time
fades
Fades
away.
Away.
Yeah.
Look Out Mama in or Look Out Joe and New Mama, I think, are from Tonight's the Night. If I'm not
Okay,
mistaken.
new mama is from there, right?
I believe so. Let me
Okay.
just open my cabinet. I gotta take my headphones off. One sec.
Yeah,
Check something. Yeah.
So while he's getting that, we're talking about the Neil Young archives, the NYAs you can see on the side here. That's known as 04, which is released of his um, Neil Young Archives Volume 2, which calls a lot of album tracks, a lot of live tracks, and also a lot of unreleased music. Like Zuma is known as Dune. The Dune is almost a whole different version of what Zuma is, and same thing of On the Beach. It's actually pretty amazing of all the additional music that he had coming out at that time. So that's what we were talking about. Were the the Neil Young archives?
Okay, I found what I wanted to show you.
Okay.
I was wrong. It's not the Tuscaloma or whatever it's called. This is the one Live at the Roxy.
Roxy, yes.
I think that's part of the archive series. I'm not sure, but it's
Yeah, it is.
tonight's the night live. This is excellent. This is a live depression right here, just like tonight's the night, right?
Yeah.
But this is very good. I love that. And I want to show you that other one we were talking about.
Yeah.
This is the CD I don't know when it came out.
Oh
It's
yeah,
from
that one that you were talking about the
Geffen.
art compilation.
Yeah, Geffen, and it's Excursions. Neil Young, Lucky. It's Lucky 13. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
Lucky 13. Yeah.
Yeah, the Lucky 13.
Yeah, Excursions into Alien Territory. That was not the title. That was just what he put on the front there. So it's part of the title. But this is where I discovered some of the songs that were on the country record, right?
Yeah.
So on Old Ways.
Yeah. I don't have that, but I want to grab it. They were talking about it. I was reading about it that when Geffen tried to do a compilation for his 1980 for his Geffen years, he became involved in it, and he made it as weird as he possibly could.
Okay, that explains things then. Yeah. This is actually, for a compilation, it's interesting. Sample and Hold, Transformer Man, Depression Blues, Get Gone. Remember that song? Don't Take Your Love Away From Me. Once an Angel, Where's the Highway? Hippie Dream, Pressure, Around the World, Mideast Vacation. Like there's quite a bit from those records we were talking about.
Yeah. There's also some, I believe, 3 unreleased tracks on there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That are not on anything else.
No, that's right. Ain't It the Truth?
Yeah.
And Get Gone. And there's one other too. And then This Note's For You closes with This Note's For You. But it's all 80s material. 82 through 83, 87, 86. Yeah, so it's all pieces from the records we've been talking about. Yeah.
It's all Geffen.
Kind of interesting.
Trans until This Note's For You.
Yeah, exactly. So that was why I had discovered some of the songs. I recognized some of them on Old Ways, but I like the material that I hadn't heard before, so I want to go back. I don't know if you have that, Noise and Flowers.
Oh, yes, I do.
Promise the Real. That's amazing.
That is.
I think you told me to get that, and I did. I bought it on LP and CD. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. What a great show.
And what's great about that is that you always heard, to get back to talking about freedom, we've always heard live version of Rocking in the Free World. but it's never stretched out. You know, it's
No.
always the live version, but on that one there,
Hmm.
man, he stretches that out to the point that you think it's over, and they bring it back.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And then they come back into it and everything. No, I was blown away with this.
Oh
I bought
yeah,
the CD and then I went out and bought the LP. I was just like, wow.
yeah,
Um,
it's amazing.
on the beach, field of helpless, field of opportunity, Alabama. Throw your hatred down, rocking in the free world. Comes a time.
Yeah,
On the beach was just the fact that that was on here. That was
yeah,
amazing to see.
yeah.
Um,
That's a hell of a treat,
yeah.
and that's a great one because it covers so much
Yes.
of his
Yeah.
career, and also puts a lot of songs on it live that he never done that before. He doesn't
Yeah.
repeat himself that much on his live tracks.
No, that's
I
right.
love it.
I've been waiting for you on here. Winter Long's on here.
Oh, I love Winter Long.
Me
That was
too.
an
Me too.
awesome track.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
just on I remember I fell in love with it on Decade.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Me too. I
Yeah.
love Decade.
And then they brought it back for his first Neil Young archive one with Crazy Horse with that live album.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I can see
The
the.
Marks on the cover.
Yep. That's right. That's right. That's where I heard it too. The first live version. Yeah. No, really impressed with that one. And this one I think you have too. This is Chrome Dreams 2.
Yes.
Yeah, which is
Yeah,
interesting as well. So
yeah, and in fact, I think we did a drop the needle on that.
yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
It's unique. Yeah, I'll have to read. I haven't pulled it out in a while, so I'll have to go back and re-listen to it.
And in fact, we did a drop the needle on that after. No, we fell in love with that one so much that we did another drop the needle that same night.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
We did that, what's that Neil Young with Crazy Horse? The one that has Ramada in, and the one that pretty much a 23-minute track.
Oh yeah, jagged pill. Psychedelic pill.
Psychedelic
pill. I was thinking jagged pill.
Yeah.
Well, by Alanis, but yeah, no, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Psychedelic pill. That's a good record. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic album.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. That to me.
Huh?
I was gonna say that to me, like I missed the opportunity to see that tour when it came through.
Oh, did you?
Might have been the last time they. I don't remember the last time Crazy Horse toured, but I only think there was maybe one other tour after that. That was about what 2013 or something. I'm not sure, but it's on my bucket list. I hope they can pull it together and do one more because I'll be there. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I would be there.
Know.
Yeah.
You know, Neil is waiting for all this COVID stuff to go away, which, I mean, how much more do you need? I mean, I want to believe that it's, you know, almost nil.
Yeah.
Even though I know there's still people out there dealing with it, but it's not as severe as it used to be.
No, there's that, and I was reading he's pissed off about. He's concerned about carbon footprint with all the venues and the trucks and all that stuff that he has to to tour with to bring the shows, and he's also pissed off with the venues and where they're getting like the venues and the kiosks that are serving chicken and beef, and how the beef and the chicken is being produced in factory farms. And so he said until that was his recent statement I read, until that changes and people are getting stuff from meat from farmers, actual farmers, and not factory farming, then he may tour. So I don't know. Once all these things are out of the way,
we're never going to see him again. If that's going to be the point,
I would love exactly. Yeah, and I was like, okay, Neil, pick a thing. Yeah, exactly. I know. It's just like you're not. Anyway, I get everything he's saying.
Come on.
Yeah, I know. Like I get everything he's saying. I understand.
Oh yeah, of course, it's great.
Appreciate it, but yeah, I mean, doesn't let's be honest, he doesn't. Bands in the modern era, they make their money by touring, right?
Yeah.
Touring and merchandise sold at the shows, and of course online sales profit. But it's different now. That's how they have to make their money. So for the bands that we like, A lot of them are still going, are still around. Like Neil does not need
Money.
to tour. No, he doesn't need money. No, exactly.
But the thing is that everything that he wants, it's a hippie dream. Huh?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Exactly. So that's the problem. So I hope it'll happen, my friend.
Oh yeah,
I would love to see Neil and Crazy Horse. I haven't seen them in a long time. One more time. Yeah, because they're getting up there, right? Like, and with the original, I like Nels Lofgren. I like his work. I like his playing, but I would like to see the original guys. But I'll take whatever, right? I'd take Promise of the Real either as well. So, but I would love to see the horse. The horse.
I would like to see the horse, but if it's Promise of the Real, I'm not going to cry about it. But
no.
But I would prefer, I would prefer the horse. Yeah. And if that means it's got to be with Nils, then I'll take it with Nils.
That's okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's all right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Sure. Well, that concludes our show. Hopefully, within a month or two, we'll do Neil Young, the 1990s, which was his one of the greatest comebacks in music history. So we will touch on that next week on Black Spinner Music Podcast. We are going to be doing the One and Done series with Led Zeppelin, where we'll go through each album and you pick only one song off of each album, your favorite song off of each album, just one and done. We did that for the Beatles last month and it seemed to have been a hit. So we're going to do the same thing with Led Zeppelin. And so that sounds like that's going to be a good time. You are more than welcome to join us if you want to, Will. Let me know.
Thank you.
But I'll be putting that together. And I will ask you if you want to do it later on, and let's see if you want to. I'm not too sure how you stand on Zeppelin.
No, I love Zeppelin. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I might take you up on that. Are you doing studio or live or both?
Oh no, just all studio.
Okay. Just
studio album right. from One Dakota.
Wow, that would be excuse me, that would be interesting to do. Yeah. Okay, I'll let you know. I won't. I'll let you know soon. I'll let you know.
All right, that's fine. I'll put that feeler out there on Friday, and then we'll go ahead and do all that. And so thanks a lot again, Will, for your time of being on the show, and also your time of playing these records, and because it takes a lot of work to get stuff like this ready, and for people like us who love the music and take this seriously, it takes time. So thank you for doing that. Yeah, it sounds like you had some fun with your family in doing so.
Yeah, for sure, Andy, and thank you for having me. I think it was good fun. Always up for some Neil chats, and always enjoy the podcast. So, yeah, thank you. It was nice to revisit these records, and you forget stuff, so it's good to come back to it, right? So, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks for everyone watching out there. Thank you for Logan's Lair of Lego. Thanks for watching. Watching your dad talk about Neil Young. I'm pretty sure he talks to you about Neil Young all the time. So I guess it was a
and Rush.
And Rush, and also to Jen. I know that you had to leave earlier, but thank you so much for watching us, Jen. You were here last week as well, along with Will. Y'all were commenting on what we were talking about last week, or maybe it was the week before when we were doing Metallica and Megadeth. You know what it was?
It was the Black Sabbath and BOC.
Yeah.
I remember Jan came on then. At least that's the one I remember. I met him on that one. Yeah. Right. Maybe he was on others.
And in fact, I think it was 1973. The top albums of 1973. Was what it was. Because we were talking about BLC and Sabbath and all that good stuff.
Right. That was a good session, by the way, Andy. I have to say, it was enjoyable. Yeah.
All right, guys. I'll be seeing y'all later. Thank you so much, Will. And everybody, keep on rocking and take care of yourselves. We'll see y'all later.
All right. Thanks. Take care, Andy.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.